Hello, Ben. How are you? If you would like to join
Exactly.
to the breakout rooms, you can select the rooms if you like.
No, I'm okay. I'm just here to give the overview about what we did yesterday evening. And otherwise, I'm writing emails. So if you need me to give my presentation, just call me in.
Okay, good.
Don't think it makes so much sense to join now for the last couple of minutes. Hey, Jing Lu, you're over there. Nice to see you.
Hi, Ben. Nice to see you.
So I think I'm not
going to
good. I
start
think
in 3 minutes, right?
yes, I think that we should probably everyone will gather here like in 5 or 10 minutes, and then we can give the brief overview. I assume you will give the overview about the backcomics.
Yeah. I will do the summary for Backcomics because Professor Yao is not available now, and I will do the presentation on behalf of him.
Do you want to start or should I start? What do you prefer?
Yeah, whatever. So maybe may I start the first one because I have an early class to teach tomorrow morning.
Let's do that. For me, it's perfectly fine. then let me quickly text Pedro or Arioki. Are you making the moderation here?
Administrator and, and technician.
Technician, then let me write Pedro.
Now I'll also merge everyone over to the main meeting in about 1 minute or maybe 30 seconds.
Recording stopped.
So just let us know if you need any help.
I have to bring back from home. I brought a Torx screwdriver so that I could take this cap off and adjust the thermostat.
Okay, MacGyver.
Yeah. So I left it, and I did it for Samir as well. I just loosened it enough so it looks perfectly fine, but you can actually pull the cover out. So cool in all these places.
Just to let you guys know that you're in the meeting, just in case you're not aware. We can't see your screen, Patrick and Alan.
Everybody's reconvening. Give them a moment or two to reconvene. Make sure that Pedro is here.
Hi, everyone. I believe we're just waiting for one of the breakout rooms to finish for those who've just joined us in the main room. And then we'll begin the main closing session. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. And here's Pedro.
Yes, we're just waiting for the one of the sessions to finish. Everybody will come back. Let's see. We have Ben, we have Jing. I don't know, is Janina here? Hi, Alan. Faisal.
Yeah, hello, hi.
Okay, Bosch is coming with the other people. Okay, it's me. Claudio, are you there?
Did you find your link that was actually sent to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
All good.
Okay, so let's see if everybody comes.
Recording in progress.
That's your microphone.
Please, everybody mute their microphone unless they need to talk. Okay, the last session is now transitioning towards here. Victoria,
Hi.
Claudio, good. Okay, are we all here? Yes. I think we can start the final session. Hey, Jeffrey, how are you? Seeing so many people. Can't say hello
Fine,
to
thank
everybody.
you. How are you, Pedro?
Very good. Just give me some time. I think everybody's here. So the way we're going to do this last session is we're going to have the people who have been panelists just to briefly tell us what's the essential takeaway they have from their session. I have to say that what this has demonstrated is that we have to continue more specialized discussion and facilitate the exchange. In reality, each presentation has opened so many questions and at the same time so many possibilities of interaction. So let's start with an order that I've established. Jing, can you summarize the main points from your group? You don't even have to present it, you can just say it. Oh, wait, if you have it, perfect. Okay, can't hear you.
Yes. Yeah, everything's good.
Yes, now it's good.
Okay, so hello everyone. So it's my pleasure to do a brief summary for our symposium, Brain Apparatus Communication, on behalf of Professor Yao. And in our session, and we had two talks. The first one is we talk about the first year of the Brain Apparatus Communications Journal, and the second talk is about Professor Thomas Ross talk about he did the work about the neurofeedback. And the first talk is presented by me and on behalf of Dezhong Yao, and we talk about the brain apparatus communication and the journal. And for the concept, the new concept of brain apparatus communication, and this concept integrates psychosomatic medicine and brain-computer interface for neuroscience and clinical neurosciences. And we talk about four aspects of the BAC concept. And last year, we launched a new journal and brain apparatus communication, a journal of biocomics. And this is the official website. And we also published some papers about this new concept. And the first one is on our new journal, and those are two for other journals. And we want everybody to we go together for a better tomorrow, and under the GBC family, and of course welcome new papers or special issues from you, and we also welcome new editors from you. And for the second talk is presented by Thomas Ross, and he's from University of Geneva, and he talked about the restoring alpha brain rhythms in post-traumatic stress disorder with EEG neurofeedback. And during his presentation, he talked about the alpha rhythm and the default mode network, and some positive correlation between mind wandering and default mode network. And this is a protocol used for the neurofeedback, and this is a visual feedback task. And yeah, it's a closed loop neurofeedback. And mainly during his talk, and he mentioned with different alpha power, and he can get the different signal. High alpha power stands for the reduced attention, and low alpha power reduced stands for the enhanced attention. And also he found before and after the alpha training about the neurofeedback, and we can find some positive effect. And also during the PTSD patients, we can find the positive effect for the neurofeedback method. And also here are we can find the decrease about the this indicator and in PTSD and scores. And in summary, the neurofeedback is very useful in PTSD patient. And in summary, we think Professor Ross talk stands for we think it's BAC2. So it's between it's interaction between the brain and non-living apparatus. And last, we want to mention again our new journal, and this is the official website, and this is the email. And if you have any question, you can contact us. So that's all for my summary. Thanks for your support.
Okay, so let's go on, and we want a very short. Let's try to shorten. Thank you, Eugene. We want very short so that we can have a general discussion. So now we hear from Ben Becker.
Okay, hi Pedro, thanks for giving the floor to me. So can you see my PPT?
Yep.
My presentation? Yes, okay, perfect. So first of all, I'd like to thank you, Pedro, and also Ellen for organizing this, and then the entire technical team in the background. So everything was really very well organized, and it was a pleasure. I had the pleasure to join and lead this year the project on COVID-induced brain dysfunction, and I think I don't need to mention lots of the background, so we know everyone here that COVID changed the life. We have huge numbers of people infected, and we have increasing evidence for long-term negative effects, or called long-term or long COVID. This year, we wanted specifically to find out what are different disease pathways, are there vulnerable individuals, are there psychological and social factors that can contribute to this? Because this is of critical importance to identify those who are in greatest need for actual treatment. So we have a huge number, and even if the numbers of individuals with long COVID is around 1 or under 1% of those infected, probably it's higher, the total number is huge, and it's a huge strain on the health system. So what we are trying to find is influence factors with the viral virus, but also independent of the virus. I was very happy to have quite a number of speakers in the session this year. And I was particularly happy to also have a couple of early career speakers, for instance, like Winnie Tsao from the University of Hong Kong, who talked about pediatric changes in the brain, so in young kids aged 3 to 8, and also Daniel Scharfenberg from Cologne, who is also a very young researcher. I also had people from Pedro's team in my group who did a very excellent research on a prospective study on QEEG. And we had Christian Montag there, who spoke about basically something like a side effect of the pandemic, so that we see particularly under young people an increasing number of excessive internet use, or particularly smartphone social media use, which also may have negative factors. So I think key points that we discussed were there are social and psychological influence factors irrespective of the virus. And although we see particularly on the level of the brain that all the analytic procedures have a strong effect in actually which brain regions are identified, we see, and this was a very interesting talk, that the number of excessive digital media use, so smartphone use, social media, gaming among young people rocketed over the pandemic. We just had a huge study from Europe that says it's an increase of 15 to 20%, so it's massive. We've seen from one talk that the young brain is maybe particularly vulnerable to COVID-induced dysfunctions. We've seen a nice talk or a series of talks that show that EEG and cognitive tests might be a potential and also scalable marker. And we have long discussed if network levels, so feedback loops, may lead to a persistence of the deficits in the patient. So I think what are action points? What we need, and this is what I'm currently working on, although with the team here in Chengdu, including although Pedro, obviously, and Pedro's team is, I think we need something like a data sharing initiative, like an Enigma-style initiative that also can capitalize on original data. So we had an overview, and there's a massive amount of studies, scattered studies with small numbers of patients. Some have longitudinal designs, some have younger patients, some have older patients. So bringing this all together and identifying really causal and mediating factor would be, I think, would be very important to finally get on common ground. I think we need a call for action. That is how can COVID impact particularly the young brain? And the second thing is, do we have a secondary pandemic of, for instance, technological overuse, which comes with quite a number of negative side effects, maybe for the brain, maybe for mental health. Finally, obviously, this is what although came out more and more, we need scalable diagnostics to identify those in need for treatment. And we need, obviously, although in the long run, or better in the shorter run, scalable treatments that we have. I think for the future, we can integrate this actually nice with some other working groups. And I think that would be nice also for the next meeting to have more interactions between the groups. So I think particularly with the effects on the developing brain, it would fit very good to Damien Fair's group. Obviously, the scalable treatment in QEEG would be highly interesting to move on in this direction with Pedro and with the team who work on QEEG here. And I think the development of brain-based interventions would fit all very good, for instance, to what Thomas Ross did or was Jing Lu just presented from Dr. Yao's team. So I think at the end, what I can do is thank again the organizers, thanks for the speakers, and hope that we can move forward together in the next years. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Ben. Faisal, can you summarize the neurodevelopment part?
Yes, sure. So my throat's causing me some problems, so please just bear with me. I just want to first of all echo Ben's thanks to the organizers for this event. So it's been very informative and interesting. So I appreciate all the effort that's gone into that. So our theme, neuroscience of brain development, follows on really nicely from sort of the point that Ben was making. So we have three themes that sort of emerged from our conversations. The first was an update that sort of came from the Global Longitudinal Adolescent Development Project, or GLAD, with the idea here is to sort of leverage developmental cognitive neuroscience, bioinformatics, public health systems to inform strategic global policies to improve population level sort of brain health. And the way to sort of go about doing that is to effectively have sort of sites across the sort of world that are truly representative of global sort of society undertake global longitudinal sort of research, primarily sort of using EEG, but not just exclusively EEG, fMRI where that's possible, structural MRI that's possible, but also sort of behavioral data as well. So a sort of a shout out to Emmanuel Boni, who's been doing some tremendous work on that white paper, and that will be released in the sort of coming months. So that's someone's sort of an output to look out for from the GBC. So that's the first theme. The second theme was centered around the Barbados nutrition study. So it's chaired by Professor Janina Galla. And we had talks
She's
from,
available here. She's available here to say something about it.
oh,
Okay?
fantastic. So maybe Janina will be able to correct any of my sort of misinterpretations of the sort of the session there, but I'll just very quickly sort of summarize.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, a 55-year longitudinal study on a cohort with moderate to severe protein energy malnutrition in the early years or the first year of life. We had talks from Folia, Bosch, Anne, Ariel, and Janina herself. We heard about projects of examining how historic and recent EEG data were linked to sort of later cognitive decline. We had Folia's mediation analysis showing how premature cognitive aging is mediated by brain state set at school age. It's a very interesting sort of work. Anne and sort of Ariel also presented some really fascinating data on adverse events in early years and comparing those with the sort of malnutrition, showing that sort of malnutrition seems to be the strongest sort of impact on subsequent sort of cognitive decline. We had some more recent work as well from on this sort of population, EEG with FNAIRS. Anne Gallagher was presenting some work showing malnutrition early in life has lower ERP sort of correlates as well, particularly in the EN2 sort of component. Some really fascinating sort of work there. And then finally, so that was a second theme around Barbados nutrition study. And then finally, we had a theme on sort of methods. So I presented some work that we're doing in the UK for acquiring large volumes of data in the classroom using a sort of workshop of citizen science or citizen neuroscience methodology that we can sort of align with the curriculum and sort of really sort of collect large volumes of data with that approach. And then Bosch and Giuseppe Cirenza described some work using sort of sophisticated analysis of EEG data to dissociate different types of dyslexia. Really sort of impressive sort of degrees of sort of accuracy there. So that's sort of wrapping up our three themes there. So that was a GLAD sort of project, Barbados nutrition study, and then methods for sort of scaling and analysis.
Faisal, if you would have to summarize in a sentence what you would like us, the GBC, to help in, what would you say?
Well, so the first one, the GLAD white paper, is a call to action. So we will have a sort of, it's effectively a manifesto there for sort of getting people involved in addressing some of these questions. So the points actually that Ben was making around sort of COVID, actually we could sort of do something pretty important through the GLAD sort of initiative. So it's a call to action here. If you can get involved in that global longitudinal sort of effort in any way, it might not just be collecting data. That would be where I think most help would be sort of required. So I think that's the number one priority from our side.
Okay, thank you. Janina, can you pitch in? You have to unmute. Let me ask you to unmute. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Okay.
Okay, so that was a great summary of our, of our findings. And I don't know if you can I screen share these real quickly?
Well, yes, quickly. Yes. This is being on quick. Please.
Okay, I don't see, again, I mean, technical issues. I don't see where to screen share.
Oh, but then maybe it's better, Janina, tell us what you, I mean, I think
Okay.
that.
So basically, the only thing that I wanted to add, I thought that was a great overview and a summary, including of our work. I think the important point is that, yes, early malnutrition has a very dominant effect, even in light of other adversities. However, in the control group, the important point is that if you had exposure to 3 other adversities, of course, the controls were not malnourished, but if you had it, if you came from a poor background, if you experienced abuse and neglect in early childhood, and your mother was depressed, you also had a 4-fold increase in developing accelerated cognitive decline at 45 to 51 years of age. So what's really important is that there are multiple pathways in high-risk children in high-risk areas globally that get you to accelerated cognitive decline and other neurological and behavioral disorders in middle and late adulthood. And I think that our plan is, of course, to expand all of our models to include some of these other exposures, because our control group is also a high-risk group. It's a matched group that came from the same classrooms as the children with early childhood malnutrition. Our future goals for our study, would be to undertake follow-up brain imaging studies of the BNS participants at older ages, at 60 and above, when dementia studies are typically conducted. One of the interesting findings in the BNS is that we are already seeing dementia at ages 45 to 51. But we also need to look at age 60, and it may be that the differences narrow between the control and previously malnourished groups as the other Barbados control participants also age. Number two, we are also planning intergenerational studies. As Ariel mentioned, we see very striking effects on 183 DMRs, and mostly in the responding to immune functions in our epigenetic studies. And we also have behavioral findings of increased attentional deficits in the next generation that were never exposed directly to malnutrition. So again, with the sample now nearing 400 individuals, we also plan to look at the intergenerational group. We plan also to analyze epigenetic samples. There were 258 that we collected but have not yet analyzed, while continuing to collect in our follow-up studies additional epigenetic samples. I would also like to again emphasize that we are looking not only at early malnutrition, but we have collected the database, and the BNS includes a very extensive documentation of other early life adversities, as well as early childhood malnutrition, in large part because of my own background as a child psychiatrist. We understood that these were important important aspects of child development, as Michael Millam talked about yesterday. And finally, we plan to add a Jamaica sample that has also been followed longitudinally, which would extend our sample size in another cohort with a shared genetic and cultural background. So this is something that we've already obtained permissions for. Dr. Simon Anderson, who is now the director of the BNS, alongside myself, has obtained these permissions, and this is actually a very exciting next phase of our study as we begin to replicate and extend our work. Finally, I was very excited to hear all of the other presentations, because our work so aligns with others. We are happy to participate, again, in open science, in sharing our data with others, including, the adolescent, work that was just talked about, and feel that our work is directly related also to the work described on aging and cognitive decline, etc. So again, we look forward to working closely with everyone else in the GBC. This is an exciting opportunity to consider brain development in high-risk areas in LMICs, which have never received any kind of focus, through NIH or other funding agencies. And we look forward to working with all of you in accomplishing these goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janina. Excellent summary. So let's move on. And can Bosch, there was a very interesting session on EEG methods. Bosch, can you try to summarize this, and then we ask for help from other people if necessary?
Yes, I will be very brief, and other people can also talk. We had a very, very good session. It was very long. This work group has a lot of results. We have been collaborating a lot. We have first a lecture by Scott, who was very didactic, very basic principles of EEG research. and he talked about many of the new advances, great advances in high density EEG research, and he finished with some guidelines for improving the quality of high resolution EEG that I think we should promote and distribute widely. Then we had Thomas Koenig with the microstage. He made a very brief history of the microstage. He mentioned most of the problems we face in the microstage research and the effort they have been doing to standardize the research in this field and the tools they are developing to try to obtain more reproducible research. Then we had Yuri Pavlov with EEG Many Labs, Yuri and Faisal. They made an introduction of EEG Many Labs, all the organization of the project, the results they have obtained up to now, the opportunities to join the project and to share data and to collaborate. EEG Many Labs is one of the projects with which we have more strong collaborations, and we have been working very closely together. And finally, we had a panel that was chaired by Kay and Dora on EEG annotations. So in standardization of annotations, all the effort that have been doing in the standardization of the use of SCORE HED and integration SCORE HED and EEG bits format to try to standardize the EEG annotations and to try to make more reproducible also this more standard the annotation of the different events in the EEG. We had the presentation by Bruno of the facilities of the Anywave, the editor they have been developed at the University of Marseille with a lot of functionalities and also integrating HED score and bit. And then finally we had Christine, who presented the EEG net, all the effort that is being doing in the EEG net. Also, she presented the advances in the tools that have been developed for the EEG net, the editor that is also being developing for the annotations, all the facilities they have. So I think in summary, there is a great integration of all the work we have. There is a lot of collaboration we are already doing. There was a line, a common line in all presentation is trying to create a standard to make reproducible research and try to create guidelines for improving the EEG work. I think Christine has some points also that she wanted to say.
Yes, thanks, Bosch, for summarizing that so nicely. I'll just note that Scott emphasized how much collaboration has already taken place, especially getting larger initiatives like NEMAR and EEGNet off the ground. And I think Kay mentioned that scaling the analysis-ready data sharing, as well as integrating the flexible analytics, as Scott mentioned, is going to be key for leveraging these for machine learning, and particularly for maintaining a focus, which we want to be, of course, mindful of for global applications and LMIC access to these research outputs, as well as applications. And community engagement on a lot of these efforts has been very impressive so far, and we want to maintain that focus, especially around data standards, as you mentioned, Bosch, since many of these are at a critical moment, particularly BIDS EEG derivatives, head tags, and the ontologies that we see piloted by groups like Dora and Tal at the Mayo Clinic for SCORE, developed by Sandor Benici. So I think we're looking for the way ahead together in these multiple efforts, and engagement with the clinical and the scientific communities for translation and applications is particularly key to move forward with together.
Okay, so we're running a bit out of time. Is there anything that was missed to summarize this, to go, to finalize? or we can bring it up at the end if anybody thinks so. So I'm going to talk about the session on modeling, the nonlinear brain. And basically, I can summarize that this was devoted to how to do better neural modeling, on the one hand, how to look for better descriptors of the EEG. This will feed into all the rest of the efforts. And finally, there was a very interesting talk by Ludovico Minati, who is straddling let's say, the fence between mathematical nonlinear modeling and actually constructing circuits that mimic the behavior he's interested in. And as he pointed out, all nonlinear science started out with circuits. That's the way it started out. And he's returning to that and finding many phenomena that is very difficult to model. He is able to find phenomena like criticality, clustering of different connections, many other things. It's a very interesting and thought-inspiring talk. So basically, this was a methods, and that's the summary of it, okay? So I would like Claudio. Claudio, can you briefly summarize? Are you there, Claudio? Here he is.
Claudio, I think you're still muted.
Professor, you need to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Yes, now it's good.
Okay. So the Alzheimer's disease dark side is the biomarkers of vigilance and cognitive dysfunction. And you see the speakers and discussion. The first statement for the first talk held by me was that the resting state EEG allows to probe abnormalities in the ascending neural system regulating vigilance. And then the dysregulation of vigilance, the confusion of the patients with Alzheimer's disease, dementia, or mild cognitive impairment is something that is not considered in the clinical guidelines, is not tested by neuropsychological tests. And we have abnormalities in resting state EEG from demonstrated by several groups, and they are measures of vigilance disorders in Alzheimer's disease patients. The second talk was held by Gorsha Vianer, my co-chair of Dementia Work Group in Global Brain Consortium, and she presented data on another approach using EEG techniques, the event-related potentials in paradigms testing cognitive tasks. And she produced a lot of evidence that patients with Alzheimer's disease show abnormalities in oscillatory impulse responses during cognitive tasks and in relation to healthy subjects or patients with other diseases. And so, for example, in a one-position paper by Dr. Vianer, Bahar Guntin, and other people, they could demonstrate that converging literature evidence showed this kind of changes in event-related oscillations in cognitive tasks in relation to the severity of the disease. Gorsha also provided a lot of literature evidence that this approach of event-related oscillations is sensitive to cholinergic therapy and could be used to in clinical trials testing new cholinergic drugs. And we concluded that with the first two presentations that The actual panel of biomarkers of Alzheimer's disease are important for the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease based on amyloid and tau biomarkers from amyloid PET, tau PET, or cerebrospinal fluid. And structural magnetic resonance imaging is important for neurodegeneration, to measure neurodegeneration. But we need another layer of information, the pathophysiology of vigilance disorders with resting state EEG biomarkers and event-related oscillations to probe abnormalities during effective cognitive tasks. Then there was the presentation of Maria Bringa, who reported a revolutionary therapeutical approach with neuro-EPO. Neuro-EPO was a form of APO with protective effect on the neurons without the side effect of APO. EPO. And he could demonstrate in a clinical trials with EEG techniques that there is a strong relation between variants of EEG, resting state EEG, and cognitive performance in the patients with Parkinson's disease, and that these cognitive and EEG measures are sensitive to the effect of neuro-EPO. With an elegant statistical approach, it could demonstrate this mediation effect of EEG activity in between the neuro-EPO and the cognitive performance, but also raise some need of further analysis to understand some external operating factors to explain the variance. Finally, we had another extraordinary talk by Vasily Cisarev, who introduced the concept of optogenetics, very well known in animal studies. You can introduce with the gene processes some channels in the membrane of the neurons which are sensitive to light, to have inhibition or closure or opening of the channels. This is well known. But he was the first with his group to demonstrate that you can have an activation of nanoparticles by X-ray to emit light and regulate the opening or closure of the ionic channels in the membranes of neurons. And this new revolutionary approach now is under further studies for clinical application. Of course, there are some problems because X-ray cannot be given continuously for 24 hours, 4 weeks in humans, but they are working on this point. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Claudio, for such a wonderful summary. I have to say that Paolo had to leave because he has to see patients, and that he gave a wonderful talk. I have to remind people that these talks will be edited and will be available to the participants. But basically, he did an overview of how neurophysiology, and that is both recording EEG and also transcranial magnetic, that is to say, intervention. It is useful for neurodegenerative diseases, but importantly, he's been leading for a number of years trials on the use of EEG combined with other biomarkers as a gatekeeper to see which people who have MCI will transition to Alzheimer's disease. And this is a large-scale study in Italy. And I repeat, he had to leave because he had to see patients. Okay, so Iturria, can you summarize briefly, and then we'll hand over for the discussion to Alan Evans. So,
sure, thank you, Pedro. Yes, in the precision medicine in neurodegenerative disorders section, first, as you mentioned, Paolo presented a tour de force in how the use of electrophysiological data in combination with traditional statistical methods, graph theory, entropy measures, machine learning, can help to study better neurodegeneration and how to predict individualized disease progression. After I gave a talk on how to combine multi-omics molecular data with multi-omics neuroimaging, clinical information, therapeutic information by using disease progression models, which could be empirical, data-driven, or mechanistic models that try to provide explanations or infer mechanisms of the disease, and how they can be used for identification of better treatment options. Two main questions on the session were how to scale the methods presented by Paolo to like why they use in the clinic and in clinical trial studies. Another question, important question, was how to integrate the electrophysiological observation with the molecular and neuroimaging observations that in which we have been working separately. And those were the main points, and we made a call for collaborators and potential collaborations trying to use electrophysiological data in combination with the other one, or in combination with the methods that have been created for other kind of data. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, as usual, very, very concrete, short, but comprehensive and with the essential information. So I think that we've seen the amount of effort that's going on, the coordinations that are in place, but there may be some things that have been cropping up in all the presentations that need to be addressed. So Alan, can you guide this part? Are you here?
Yeah, I'm happy to make a few comments. Pedro, you might, before we start, I think it's important that we thank the organizing teams who did such a superb job. So Pedro, I think you should mention the Chengdu and Havana teams first.
Well, yeah, there's what we did, the whole process, no? In Montreal, we had Christine. In Chengdu, basically, now we've had what we did was we asked for volunteers, and frankly, everybody was enthusiastic. I think they did a very good job. We had a moderator, their names are in the program now. We had a moderator and a technical person. I really have to ask excuses for any glitches, because this is the first time they organize a conference of this sort, which has been quite large. And I think they did an excellent job in recording and doing everything. I have to single out Arioski, who you see up there, who it was the guy who was behind masterminding all the Zoom. We had also Mikey, who was coordinating all the moderators. Then we had Sherry and Annie, who were moderators, and Sundas. This is practically from all over the globe, but at the Chengdu lab. And we also had Carlos as a technical person, Usama as a technical person, and the whole group actually today was elated. You know, they had to stay up till late, but they were actually very, very, very happy. And of course, we have our indispensable Bosch, who was masterminding everything. So the team really is very happy. They ask excuses for any glitch that might have happened, but they say that they were very happy to do this. Okay? If I missed anybody, please forgive me.
Yeah, thank you, Pedro. I mean, I couldn't agree more. This has been a tour de force to pull together people across the globe in many time zones. And at our own end, I'd like to thank particularly Christine Rogers, Irem Catitas, Patrick Bermudez, and Jorge Bosch-Bayard, who've moved mountains to keep this whole thing moving forward. We've had a huge amount of science presented in the last 2 days. I think it'll take us a few weeks to digest everything, and we'll all look at the videos and the YouTube presentation in due course. The issue that does come up is we have here an opportunity for integrating huge data sets across the globe. The GBC should be focusing its efforts on low and middle income countries and democratization, which is something that has reappeared constantly throughout these last 2 days. But the potential for creating large data sets a la Enigma, you're all familiar with the Enigma initiative, which has done this kind of thing across the globe for particularly imaging and genetics. I think the GBC has to continue its focus on EEG, but with a global focus in LMICs, and I think we'll do that. Of course, that's easy to say. We've heard a lot in the past few days about the methodological underpinnings of such global visions. We heard about the mind logger data set front end from Mike Milham. You of course have heard about Loris and CBrain at our end. HED heads and score you heard of from Kay today. And Doris, the EEG to BIDS initiative, I think is important in allowing us to develop a greater degree of interoperability. I think we have to explore what are the complementarities between, for instance, the NEMAR and CBrain in support of the EEG analytics. All of this comes down to integration. We certainly need to explore more the potential overlaps and complementarities between, for just as a few, the Born in Bradford initiative from Faisal, the EEG, many labs. We heard from Yuri and the GBC. What is common and complementary between these initiatives? And I think what this really boils down to is we need to have an active meta steering committee across these initiatives, just to make sure that we are in fact talking to each other and not so much duplicating efforts. I mean, we're all scientists, we've all been around a long time. This is inevitable, there's always duplication to some extent, but there is an opportunity here to build upon and take advantage of efforts that other people are doing, so that we're not so much reinventing the wheel. And I think that such a meta steering committee, I think, is mandatory at this point, with all of the outstanding efforts that we've heard about from the last few days. So give that some thought. We'll follow up about how this might come into being. Last point I think is worth mentioning is that in the next few months, we will all be, many of us, reappearing at the Human Brain Mapping Conference in Montreal. I think that might be an opportunity for us to just revisit the fallout from the last 2 days and come up with specific action items in the next few days, and then revisit them in July, which happens to be in Montreal at HBM, just to see that we can maintain this momentum. There's a lot of enthusiasm right now, but as we all know, enthusiasm tends to wane a week and 2 weeks afterwards. So it is important that we maintain that momentum with specific action items. But for me, the overarching message, of course, is interoperability and data sharing initiatives across all of these programs. That's really all I have to say at this larger level. We can get into the weeds, but it's 12:10, so I don't want to go on and on and on. Pedro.
Well, I think you summarized and actually that's the first item of the action plan. We're going to have to digest everything here to guarantee that then there's a plan proposed to achieve what you're saying. I would suggest that we already have we decided to create a project committee where all the leads of all the projects are. And up to now, they were the forerunners. We prepared for this meeting by having them report. I think that now that we have the information, what we have to talk about is exactly what you said, Alan, which is interoperability, how to avoid, let's say, duplicating efforts. How do we guarantee with the interoperability that we can exchange the data and not only the data, but the methods. I think there's been very inspiring talks here, and the software, and this will be the backbone on which everything will be constructed. When we first talked about this several years ago, Alan, with the donor, no, with Mr. Lutmer, this was just a vague idea. And in our first meetings, this was also saying, well, what can we do in this direction? And I think we're now at a different stage. We're saying, how can we really move forward and do our work efficiently? So the only thing I have to say is, first, I have to say that it's been great working with Alan. No, he's always been injecting enthusiasm into everything and seeing the practical points of things. And this has been a great journey, which I hope we will continue together. So see you guys in Montreal, and thanks for participating with us.
Before everybody, feel free to speak up if anybody has some larger strategic perspectives.
Jeffrey Abdullah from Malaysia. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah, okay. Since the last meeting, because in Malaysia it's very difficult to get grants. So the most important thing is to get the ethical approval. And the ethical approval has to come from experiments that have been done, maybe by more developed countries or other lower middle income countries that may have to be repeated, or there are some new objectives. Once we get the ethical approval, then it is easier for us to hunt for grants, because getting ethical approval in Malaysia can take up to a year, depending on what's in the study. So if we could, as part of the GBC initiative, have a copy of proposals that we can use or modify, and that has been also approved by other ethical committees all around the world, we would be able to then get the ethical approval first. We may have to downscale the sample size though, and thereafter then maybe get chase for grants. So that's what we've been doing. For example, we had to wait a year to get ethical approval for a study on corruption and kleptocracy in Malaysia. After 1 year of getting that approval, we were able to find a small grant to start with a small sample size first. But that took us nearly 1 year, 6 months. So, and Malaysia is not very good now with its funds. So the grants are not many anymore, and the amount of grants are not much. So is it possible for Malaysia to collaborate with LMIH or a developed country in any fields, for example, in nutrition or the growing brain, for example, or even dementia, so that we can get the ethical approval first in our country and thereafter look for grants, either within Malaysia or internationally? Thank you.
Go ahead, Pedro.
Okay, so first, about standardizing ethical approvals, that's something that's come up repeatedly in the steering committee, and there are people identified. We've gone much further in EEG, in the sense that to be able to gather the data sets, we're now finalizing with the INCF, the International Neuroinformatics Coordinating Facility, all this material. This is simply that this could help. Now, second, I think that the main thing we have to do is to establish alliances, which will allow us then to approach funding agencies. And these alliances have to be multinational. I know by experience that it's not, nobody's a prophet in his own land. However, if you create alliances and there's groups, then there's much more possibilities of getting funding. I have to say that, for example, the GLAD project is in this direction, and which is open, in which we will now take this project to WHO and get its blessing. And though WHO is not a funding agency, this is the route that we're taking so that it will become easier later to get funding. So you've touched upon two things, Jaffrey, which is one, to standardize the things that I've come to think of it, is standardize ethical approvals, and second, to have the support of the international organization on many of these topics relating to software, to sharing data, and then to create alliances that will allow us to try to search for funding. So it's an unsolved problem, but I think it should be high on the agenda of the actions to take. Thank you for bringing it up.
I hope, Pedro, we did put our name into the GLAD paper. I'm not sure whether we are one of the co-authors in that paper.
Everybody is going to be
from Malaysia.
This is a collective effort. No, this is one of the collective efforts. In fact, we've been invited by WHO, as I said, to help in one step, which is the definition of indicators of child, brain development. No, and that's going to be in May. And Damien, Bosch, and I are going to be there for this discussion. So we're going towards that, but it is very important.
All right, I'm going to take a moderator's privilege and identify a few victims to make a few final comments. Faisal, what do you think at a strategic level? And then Nina and Scott.
So I really like this idea of having a sort of a meta sort of a steering group to ensure coordination. And that's a sort of area that's sort of fast growing, lots of activity happening. There's a lot of overlap, and I think we can work much. I think this has demonstrated the sort of value of working together. So I think that would be my number one sort of recommendation. Let's get that group together. I think you're on mute again, Alan.
I should be good. Janina?
Janina had to leave. She has patience. So who did you want to speak now? Alan, I didn't. Alan, were you able to hear that? It seemed like noise.
You have another microphone on in your room, Alan.
Can you hear me now?
We're hearing some echo. Perhaps Patrick's laptop could help if everything else is muted. It's still choppy, I'm afraid. It might be the Wi-Fi.
All right, there's another technical glitch, so I'm going to pass it over to Pedro to make final comments. Pedro?
It's perfect now, though. Of course.
Now Pedro is muted.
You're mute, but
Scott, do you want to say some comments? Yes, I know. But you wanted Scott to say something. And Scott, we can hear. Scott, do you want to say something?
Oh, well, just thank you for including me. And I'm very excited about the whole effort and broadening its scope by bringing together leaders from different projects is, I think, a timely idea. Yes.
Okay, so Alan, I don't have anything more to say. I think we've discussed things that we just have to proceed. And once again, I think we just have to thank people and say goodbye. No, for now, you'll be hearing from us. You can't get rid of us that easily. Okay, bye.
All right.
Bye, thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
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 Bye, everybody.
Jorge.
Great. Can we stop recording?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Bye.
Well, hi, Christine. Can you hear us?
Yep, can hear you, but a lot of echo.
Okay, I just
Kindly stop the recording, please.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And
Who is actually
stop the live
controlling
stream as well.
it? Central or is it local?
Arioski, I think you need to stop the recording.
So if you click on that, Ida.
Patrick, let's mute you in the meanwhile.
Christine, if you must be host. Can you actually, because we
mute
don't
you.
have a stop button.
I think we're just waiting on the host. I can't stop the recording. Bosch, Arioski, can you hear me? And could we stop the recording, please?
Arioski already left. Osh, can you please stop the recording?
Thank you. Let's hang on one moment until that happens. I think Bosch may have left as well. I think what that means is that we should regroup elsewhere, and this video will have to be edited, and that's okay. So let's leave and Patrick.
Yeah, that's
yes,
that's okay. I think we can all leave, and later we can edit the video.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Not even recording. Like normally, you should be able to this is red, and when you click it again, it stops.
Yeah.
I tried to do these. GBC.
Now, mute your mic.
Achoo!